Today I want to talk to you guys about a hypothetical situation of what if the housing market never crashes? Now I know there's people on both sides of the aisle out there who watch these sort of videos, and some people are really bearish on the housing market and think that it's going to crash tomorrow because things are just too insane. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there's people that are like, no way, man, the house prices are going to keep going up. There's no inventory. Everybody's desperate to buy a house, blah, 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 blah. So today I want to go over some scenarios of what the housing market might look like in the future if the market never does crash, and how this might affect our country as a whole. Now, real quick, for any of you longtime fans of the channel, you might have seen me film in this location before. This is right over here, right behind the fire station and police department here in Miami Beach. And over there they got like a little dog park. You can see they got the fire rescue boat right here on the bay. And it's another overcast day today, nice and cool, about 65 degrees, perfect weather out here. Now, one thing I want to make super clear to everybody is I'm not saying that the housing market is going to keep going up, and I'm not saying that it's going to crash. I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't really know what's going to happen because there's a lot of external factors that will affect ultimately if the housing market will crash or not, and that's kind of the premise of this video. Now, here's the deal, guys. There actually should have been a housing market crash back in 2020 when they decided to lock down the entire world and basically shut down everything. There should have been a housing market crash then. But the only reason we didn't see a housing market crash, I believe, are two reasons. The government printed $4 trillion plus, pumped that into the economy, made sure people didn't lose their homes, while simultaneously putting things into place like eviction moratoriums and, foreclosure moratoriums, things like that, to keep people in their homes during dangerous times. So I'm not saying that they should have done that. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done it, but let's face the facts that those things and those behaviors actually prevented a housing market crash that otherwise would have took place if they would have just let everything happen naturally. And letting things happen naturally is actually probably the best thing for us in the long run, and that's the kind of the situation that we're facing right now with the upcoming interest rate hike. Now, here's some of the things that I think might happen if the government keeps interfering with our housing market and printing money in general. If you're not in the real estate game right now, meaning that you don't own any type of real estate, you don't own a home, you don't own an investment property, then there's a good chance in the future that you'll never be able to own one unless you don't own one by choice and you have a lot of money. But if you think things are unaffordable now, just wait. If they go with one of my predictions that I recently had in one of my other housing market videos, if they raise interest rates and it starts negatively affecting the stock market and the housing market, that they may quickly reverse course and go back to putting rates at nearly zero because they don't want to rock the boat and they don't want to tank the economy. Problem is, if they do that, we're going to have a couple other problems that, in my opinion, are even worse. Housing prices are going to continue to skyrocket like they have been in the last couple years, which is completely unsustainable. But if the Fed does not stick with their action plan of raising the interest rates, this is a major possibility, okay? And the other thing is, things are already unaffordable for people, right? Here in South Florida, I even saw that there's people already protesting, saying housing's a human right. People are pissed off about the rental increases, going up 100%. And, I don't blame them. I think housing is a human right, and it's not something that should be exploited to the point where people literally can't afford a place to live even if they work a full-time job. That's not a good thing for our country, guys. But the thing is, they're supposed to raise interest rates 3 to 4 times this year, and if they don't do that, if they don't stick with the plan that they said that they were going to do, then we could be facing a situation where the housing market and inflation runs completely out of control. They just announced that inflation is higher than they thought it was going to be at 7.5% now as of January 2022, and that's a problem, guys. So the only way to even begin fixing this is to stick with their original plan of raising the interest rates. But my fear is that they're going to see things going down, like the stock market and the housing market and foreclosures and short sales and things like that starting to happen again. And then all the politicians are going to freak out and they're going to be like, no, we don't want this to happen on our watch because we're not going to get reelected. But the thing is, it needs to happen. It's a necessary pain that our country must face at this moment in time. A lot of people get the impression that a market crash is a bad thing, but I, for one, don't think it is a bad thing. Now, here's a few positive things about a housing market crash. One, it brings prices down to more affordable levels for everyday folks that are looking to get into their first home. The next thing is it actually encourages investors to get back out there and pick up more doors, because now prices are lower and chances are their returns are going to be higher, because typically whenever the housing prices dip, the rent prices usually don't go down that much along with them. They might see a slight hit, but not anywhere near the type of hit that you're going to see when the housing market crashes. And the other thing that I think is really important about a housing market crash is it's a reality check for a lot of people who grossly overpaid for property, who just thinks that the property is going to keep rising forever, it's going to go to the moon. And it's a reality check for those guys who paid $100,000 over asking price or $200,000, all these crazy stories that you hear on the news. Those people are going to be the ones paying the price when the housing market crash does happen. Now let me know what you guys think in the comments. Since this is a hypothetical discussion, I want to hear your opinions on what you think could happen if the housing market never crashes. What is the outcome you think is going to be? You know, what do you think is going to be the future of the housing market in a scenario like that? Now, I personally think that the housing market will need to crash at some point, or at the very minimum, a correction, meaning prices go down by maybe 10-15%. That's not a crash in my opinion, that's more of a correction. You know, a crash would probably be like 30% or more price drops. That's probably a crash. That's something more like alarming for a lot of people, right? But let me know what you guys think. I want to hear your opinion. Now here's the other thing I think that could happen if the housing market doesn't crash. I think then inflation will run completely out of control, okay? It's already at 7.5%, and that's just the number they're telling us it is. It could be higher or lower depending on where you live in the country and the type of goods that you usually buy, okay? So if they don't raise the interest rates and they just keep printing money to try to sustain things and prevent a housing market crash, a lot like they did in 2020, then that's it, guys. It's game over. The reason why it's game over is because I know it will hurt to have a housing market crash. We'll be in a recession in the US. Nobody likes to see their stock market portfolio take a dip. Nobody likes seeing their house value go down. But that's temporary pain, okay? We'll eventually recover from that when things get better and the supply chains are resolved and things like that. But I'll tell you what's not going to happen. If they keep printing money and they sustain this market into a fantasy world, which in my opinion we're already in this fantasy world of prices with real estate across the country essentially, if they keep trying to sustain this and don't let things crash like they're supposed to, then this is going to spell the end of our country, okay? We're going to be in a situation where our currency is going to be completely worthless. No one's going to want US dollars. Other countries aren't going to trust us, and they're not going to want our dollars either. And it's going to be the financial ruin of the United States, essentially. So our government right now is in a very tough position. They're kind of like in the situation where they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. If they do it, they're going to temporarily crash the markets until things can recover on their own. If they don't do it, inflation is going to run completely out of control, and everyday items and everyday people aren't going to be able to afford simple things that we all need to live, like food, gas, water, utilities, etc. It's going to be a nightmare. So I hope that they choose the right thing to do, which is raise those interest rates and continue with what they said they were going to do, and don't reverse course no matter how much it stings. It's a necessary pain, guys. We all need to go through this together, and in a few years from now, we're all going to be glad that we did, because by then, hopefully we'll be able to start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel and seeing some recovery going on. Now, if you guys really are worried about inflation, then I suggest you check out this video I did last week about how the inflation affects the housing market right over here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.